The most interesting and important headlines from all across the country, carefully edited for you each day at patspapers.com. Starting with the New York Times today. I want to start this morning with the stock market news from the New York Times. It's on the front page of the Wall Street Journal as well, but here it is at the top of the business section of the Times, because it's good to get some news from time to time that your 401k or your mutual fund or your brokerage statements aren't so much worse than they were the last time you opened them. The benchmark S&P 500 returned to where it was on January 1st of this year. Writer Jack Healy says for many investors, breaking even never felt so good. Minnesota's leading the charge to wipe longitude and latitude off the map. That in the St. Paul Pioneer Press this morning. The state's one of many places where a new GPS system is becoming the standard directional tool. It's called the U.S. National Grid. As graduation season gears up, students may have to forego one part of the tradition, the handshake. The Chicago Tribune writes that colleges are wary to extend a hand along with diplomas for fear of spreading swine flu. Some are floating fist bumps or elbow taps as alternatives. And maybe there's a sign the swine flu worries are passing. In Hawaii this morning, readers of the Star Bulletin woke up to the image of a hula dancing doll with a surgical mask over her face. Now, the story is actually not as lighthearted as the image would imply. There are 3 cases of the flu suspected on the Hawaiian Islands, all involving people who have recently traveled to the mainland U.S. From the New York Post today, after the scare that Air Force One caused with its unannounced Manhattan flyby last week for a photo op, the embarrassed White House says the pictures will not be published, leaving well enough alone. The president offered no comment to explain the decision. Here's an interesting bit about the relationship people have with their doctors. People are more likely to ask questions about a restaurant entree or about a price plan for their cell phone than they are about a doctor's diagnosis of their own health. The Washington Post reiterates new advice from the Federal Agency for Healthcare and Research and Quality. The advice is simply to feel free to quiz your doctor about your diagnosis. The Cleveland Plain Dealer turned over its entire front page to LeBron James, recognizing his selection as the NBA's most valuable player for the past season, 28.4 points per game, and a career-best shot percentage this past season. New York Daily News, with exclusive coverage of 2 letters Saddam Hussein wrote while in prison in 2003. According to the news, these letters detail abuse the former dictator felt he received while he was incarcerated. Also in the Daily News, the movie must have been good. The paper's leading with the judgment by reviewer Joe Newmeyer that the new Star Trek movie is exciting and successfully blends the hip and the classic. He gives it 4 stars. Along with the story, the paper has a rundown of those hunky young actors who make up the new generation Star Trek crew. Well, we know the French have a reputation for being good in bed. There's new research that shows they actually spend the most time there. The San Francisco Chronicle says France is the sleepiest country, with people spending an average of 9 hours a day in bed. Finally, how's this for a great job? The Orlando Sentinel actually has a roller coaster reviewer. On today's agenda for the paper is SeaWorld's new coaster called the Manta. Dwayne Bevel, the reviewer, calls it a dizzying 2.5-minute romp. You can see video on the Orlando Sentinel website. You'll find a link at patspapers.com. We send out a list of our favorite stories each day by email. You can subscribe at patspapers.com. That's also where you'll find the links to all of the stories I've talked about today.